The following is audio and video content from Freedom Church and Pastor Sean Wood. For more information about Freedom Church, please visit freedomchurch.sc.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool when you're part of the team. Everything is awesome when we live our dream.
Well, good morning. How are you guys doing? You doing good? All right. Hey, this weekend, we've got a lot of stuff to do, so we're going to get right into it. We're continuing our series, Everything Can Be Awesome, with one of the most important subjects that I think we can talk about in the church, which is the marriage relationship. And so I thought, hey, if I'm going to talk about marriage, I should have Connie come up here and tag team with me. So would you guys just welcome real quick my sweetheart, your first lady, Connie Wood. All right, so here's the deal. Relationships don't all go down like a love song.
In fact, some of you are probably asking, does happy ever after really even exist?
And we all know the power that relationships have on us. And sometimes, though I'm not sure that we treat the marriage relationship, especially, with the same level of importance that we know that it should have. James Patterson, in his book, Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas, gives this analogy that I think sets the tone really well as we talk about the marriage relationship. He says, life is like a series of kind of juggling that you're doing, of 5 balls that he gives the example of. And you're juggling these balls all the time. And the deal is for a lot of things in life, it's like this ball. You got to juggle the balls, but if you drop it, it will bounce back. Work, we talked about last weekend. If you drop it, it will bounce back. You can always get another job. You can always say you're sorry for what happened. There's a lot of things in life that will just bounce back. But then Patterson says the other deal is there's a lot of things in life that are fine china glass balls. And we're juggling these balls, and the key to I would say, awesome life is to know what these balls are made out of. And there's just some balls that if you're juggling and you're trying to keep everything going, that if you drop these, they will break. They will be marred. They will be destroyed right before your eyes. And the marriage relationship is one of those balls that can be damaged. And so outside of your relationship with God, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the marriage relationship is the most important relationship when it comes to the tone of what your life will be like. In fact, it's greater than your role as an employee. It's greater than your role as a parent. It's greater than your role even as a friend. The relationship with your spouse will have the greatest impact on your life. And Connie, I guess that's why we all, regardless of who we are, just love weddings.
Yeah, recently Sean and I were out at Folly Beach, and we were eating dinner at a restaurant, and all of a sudden we noticed a bride walking through, and a wedding was starting, and everybody was bent neck to get a look, to watch the wedding. It was brought everybody into smiles.
So even in a society where hookups and living together and kind of temporary relationships aren't just accepted, they're really kind of encouraged, there actually is still a better than average chance that everyone here will be married. In fact, statistics tell us that 78% of us will be married at least once.
And although we love weddings and the thought of marriage, it doesn't take too many sitcoms or romance novels to figure out that the cultural opinion on marriage is not so great.
Now, and I do want to say up front that in just preparing this message together, we figured out that we could easily do 4 to 6 sermons on the marriage relationship just to hit even just the possible subjects that we could cover.
And there are just some things that you can't deal with by yourselves or in the course of one church service. And although Sean and I are now at a place where we can say we have an awesome marriage, we've had some really low points in our 19 years. Times when only counseling with someone who is outside of our raw emotions could help us through the problems and the pain.
So for some of you here today, I know that may be where you're at. It may take some time outside of this hour that we have together to experience God and to hear what God has to say about marriage, and to find some counseling to really see some healing in your marriage.
We found in our own marriage, and certainly in observing lots of other couples that we've worked with, that most marriages are actually just a few tweaks away from being awesome. There's actually a lot of hope out there. Now, you may have heard the statistic that 50% of marriages end in divorce. You've heard that, right? Maybe you've even heard this, that 50% of Christian marriages end in divorce too. Here's the truth. Those are both lies. There's been a new major research study conducted by Shanti Felden and the Barna Group, and they used census data that showed that 78% of people who are married right now are actually married to their first spouse, and 22% of that includes people who remarried because of the death of a spouse.
And here's the kicker on that research. That's all marriages. If you actually filter marriages of people who just attend church regularly, that's just the only other question you ask. Do you attend church fairly regularly? The divorce rate drops by 50% more to less than 11%. There is hope and there is encouragement. There is good news about marriage. The good news is the actual divorce rate has never even been close to 50% in America overall. Never even been there. It's significantly lower and has been declining over the last 30 years. Here's another good news about marriage. Most marriages aren't just so-so. They're actually fairly happy and on the verge of being really healthy and awesome. The rate of divorce in the church is not the same as non-going church population. We've said for years in the church, it's the same. And I often wonder if people think, well, why do I even try? Why do I have this relationship with God if it doesn't change anything? It's not the same. It's significantly lower. And here's what all this means. Having an awesome marriage doesn't have to be as complicated as people make it and as people think. Little things can make a huge difference. And we believe that your marriages, if you're following after Jesus, should be awesome. So let's get going and dig into what the Bible says about this. Now, we're not experts in everything. We never try to say we are. I tell you guys all about our struggles. But here's the deal. We think after 19 years, we've really got something to say when it comes to marriage. So how about this? It's going to be very practical from this point on. It's just going to be 5 practical things that you can start doing today to get an awesomer marriage.
Awesomer is still not a word.
Yes, it is.
Here's the first thing. Follow Jesus. In Matthew 6:33, seek the kingdom of God above all else and live righteously, and he will give you everything you need. And that includes everything you need to have an awesome marriage.
Now, I know we're in a sermon, right? We're in a church. You look at this first point and you go, follow Jesus. That should be a no-brainer, right? But apparently it wasn't, because we almost blew this early on in our marriage.
The toughest year Sean and I had in marriage was year 2. I was 22 and Sean was 23, and the love had just plain wore off. We found each other very far away from God and in turn very distant from each other as well.
Now, here's the deal. I was on staff at a church. I was on staff at a church as a pastor. And I loved the church. I loved everything about church. I loved being at the church. I loved the smell of church. I loved church. But I wasn't following Jesus. The church culture that we were in, it just wasn't life-giving at all. In fact, it was speaking death over our marriage often. There were not any examples, at least that we knew of great, authentic, fun Christ followers that were married and working everything out and showing us how to do it. And then legalism and pretending that everything was okay and performing for everyone around me to think that everything was okay was the goal in our lives. And honestly, I was following legalism. I was worshiping through rules, following and pretending, all as I was working 70 hours a week, never seeing, never caring for, never loving my wife. And I wasn't following Jesus at all. I was a pastor at a church, and I was saved, but there was no relationship in a followership of Jesus.
Now me, I was worshiping at the altar of self. I had a lot of expectations in my head, and they were put there by Satan, the enemy of my soul. And they were put there through romance novels, chick flicks, things that I had set up in my mind as what exactly marriage would look like. And I found myself very unhappy and wanting out.
And as we walk through this time together as a couple, I found something better on the other side. Let me just say, the life that we lived without Jesus, the marriage that we had without Jesus was terrible. It wasn't awesome. It was something that we didn't want to be a part of. It was painful, and it had no joy in it at all. And some of you are there. You're trying to make it without a real relationship with Jesus. Now, you may come to church. You may pretend and perform, but there's not a following of Jesus within your marriage. And 16 years on the other side of some of the hardest times that we've ever known in our life that was in the context of our marriage, we would plead with you. We've seen what a marriage looks like when you're not following Jesus, and we've seen what a marriage can look like when you're following Jesus. We would say, follow Jesus because he is the only one who can meet your needs.
Now, ladies, I know because I've been there. You believe this lie sometimes that your husband should be able to fulfill all of these emotional needs that you have. But here's the even bigger lie. It's the lie that he can fulfill your needs. Here's the truth. Your husband, he's a human, and he's a sinner. And I know I got a lot of silent amens on that one. But here's the other truth. So are you. Here's what happens. You get married, and the wife has all these high expectations, unrealistic, and how her husband should fulfill her emotional love needs.
And the husband has some unrealistic expectations as well of how the wife is going to meet his needs.
It's like 2 ticks, no dog. Both of you are trying to get your needs met by someone who is actually completely incapable of meeting your needs. Our husbands are not God, and the desire for intimacy within us can only be truly satisfied when you're getting to know and experience God's love. When you're being filled up by Jesus, then your spouse is simply adding to what's already healthy.
So practically speaking, what can we do to follow Jesus in our marriage? This is a place, if you're taking notes, it'd be great to write these down. And if you're not taking notes, it'd be great to write these down, right? This is one of those places. All right, so first, make going to church a priority together in your life.
Second, you need to find a community of people who have awesome marriages and then do life with them. Don't hang around with people who aren't seeking to have awesome marriages. And finally, both spouses need to be actively seeking out prayer and Bible study time with the Lord.
Now, after 19 years together, and honestly, some very difficult times early on, we can promise you this: marriages don't get awesome without Jesus. So point number one, practically speaking, just follow Jesus and you will be on your way to awesome marriage. Number two, choose each other. Choose each other. Ephesians 5:25-28 says this: husbands, go all out in love for your wives, exactly as Christ did for the church. A love marked by giving, not getting. Christ's love makes the church whole. His words evoke her beauty. Everything he does and says is designed to bring the best out of her, dressing her in dazzling white silk, radiant with holiness. And that is how husbands ought to love their wives. They're really doing themselves a favor since they're already one in marriage. Now, Connie, I recently asked you, when was it in these last 16 years that you really started to feel alive again in our marriage after our struggles in our second year? And men, make no mistake, you have the power with how you treat your wife to kill your marriage and leave her dead emotionally and just destroy her. So it was a real question. When did you start to feel alive again?
When you started to choose me over everything else.
Did you hear that, guys? When I started to choose her over everything else. Here's what that meant. It was obvious that the church culture that we were in just wasn't going to work for us. I mean, I think one of the prerequisites of a church is that it should make you want to follow Jesus, right? Shouldn't that be one of the things on there? And it just wasn't working, and we weren't following Jesus. And honestly, a part of that was the reason was we weren't sure if we wanted to follow him, if what we were seeing is what life was going to look like. And I remember realizing I was either going to lose my wife or something had to change. So I came home and I told you, I'm quitting my job and we're gonna move away. We're gonna start over. We're just gonna go and find a new place, and no matter what it takes, we will follow Jesus and we will choose each other. Now, we told our family and everyone around that we were moving to Texas because we were going to go finish my seminary, because there was a seminary. We actually picked Dallas, Texas to move to because there was a seminary close enough by that we could lie to everybody and tell them that that's why we were going.
And Sean did not go to seminary for the first year and a half we were there, not one class. But when Sean quit that job, it was kind of like his first big dream job. So when he said he was willing to walk away from that, move away and start over with just me, that was the first time I really felt like, oh, he's serious. I'm important to him. See, Sean chose me. He chose me over everything except Jesus.
So sometimes we make things real spiritual, but the most godly thing I could do was quit my job as a pastor and go get a job at Starbucks as a barista. The most godly thing I could do was that. And here's the other thing. Like, I knew Connie was miserable. I knew that she wanted out. We had no kids. We were young. And we could have easily started over and just kind of separately moved on. In fact, I think we both considered it. But in the end, she chose to stay with me. She chose to believe that I was going to figure out how to be a husband. In spite of all of our issues, in spite of the painful situation we were going through, she chose me. You've got to choose each other every single day. You know, and it's not just when things are bad, like our year number 2, but every single day.
Now today, here's what Sean choosing me looks like. Every week we have a date night, and he protects that time like it's the most important time of the week. He takes me, not just me and the kids, not the whole family, not with his family, not a double date. He takes just me on a date. Oftentimes, I don't feel like a princess wanting to be saved by a prince on a white horse after a full week of being mommy. You with me, ladies? But he says, go get dressed up, smell pretty, and let me treat you like I'm still trying to get you.
Guys, did you hear that? This is a free tip for you. Treat her like you're still trying to get her.
He also sets up babysitting every quarter or so that we can go away, just the two of us overnight. Thank you very much to my in-laws for always saying yes. And then annually we go on a marriage conference. And why a marriage conference, you say? But think about it. In your career, you take continuing education. We read blog posts and books and classes on every single thing in our life, and yet marriage is supposed to come naturally? No, marriage takes a lot of work, and it's something you have to work at. So every year, you need to do something to give your marriage a boost. Every time Sean makes plans and does things that I love, it says to me, hey, I choose you. And guys, he invests, and I mean money, into our relationship before he invests in his hobbies. And I can tell you, that's very important.
Yep. And as far as Connie choosing me, here's one of the parameters of a marriage's relationship health to me. And I'm talking as a guy who has had a bad marriage, a so-so good marriage as we got healthy, and now I think an awesome marriage, and it's this. The barometer is the amount of time a couple spends together alone. Turn to your spouse and say, alone. No screens, no TV. I didn't tell you to have a full conversation. I said to say one word. One word. That's all. No screens, no TV, no computer, just alone. It doesn't have to be expensive, though, guys, I'll give you a warning, don't always be cheap, but just alone and meaningful. One of the most destructive trends that I see today, in fact, is that moms oftentimes choose their children. I'm talking about babies, toddlers, teenagers, and oftentimes even grown men. I almost put an adjective in there. Grown men, and they choose their children over their husbands. Connie is a great mom. Anybody who knows her will attest to this. She is a wonderful mom, but she has always chosen, key word there is chosen, to be a slightly better wife. And that is huge. So translation, get a sitter. Leave the kids at home and date your spouse. Women, if your husband asks you out on a date and you say no because you don't want to leave the kids, there's two things that's going to happen. One, he probably never gets alone time with the kids by himself because you think you're the only one who can do it. And that's not healthy. Second is he is going to secretly begin to resent the children. He won't mean to, but he's going to. And now, ladies, you're going to ask your husbands after this service, you're going to go, do you feel that way? And see, he knows how you are over the children. He's going to be like, no, baby, it's all good. Everything's great. It's wonderful that you choose that other man over me. It's awesome. It's awesome. But here's what he really wants. He wants you to choose him. He cares. See, Connie makes it a part of her every day to choose me. She sends me texts during the day telling me that she misses me and she can't wait until I get home from work, even though work is right in the house. She wants me to walk out of my office. She sends me other texts that, quite frankly, are none of your business to know what they say. She makes me a priority over the kids, over her girlfriends, over family.
One of the most powerful ways that you can learn how to choose one another daily is to learn how to speak each other's love language. Now, Sean and I are actually very alike in our temperament, but we are complete polar opposites in our love languages.
Now, learning to speak your spouse's love language, in other words, that's the way they hear and kind of experience love, is so important. And knowing when you're not speaking their love language is very important. So, for some of you, this is what love looks like. I mean, we come over here, and you got some roses here. You've got some candies. You want everything to smell good. So you're like, expensive perfume. That's nice. That's love language. Got a little teddy bear. Got a little gift with a card in it that says, love, love, love. And this is love language to you. I mean, it's just good things you got. Wait a minute. Okay. Maybe for you. If there's any kids left in the service, mom and dad just play cops and robbers sometimes, all right? That's all that is. But here is what love language looks like to Connie. So, you got a little smell in the air right here. That's the smell Connie wants to have going on. And this is the sexiest outfit I could ever wear for Connie, right here. And the only latex Connie ever wants to be putting on my body is right here. And nothing says love like a toilet bowl scrub and brush. This is how it is. I mean, this is love. This is the love language to Connie. And what I figured out is if I can speak her language here and help her get stuff done. We've got 4 kids in the home. We've got a crazy schedule. What she really wants is help me, serve me, do things around the house so that I can get to time. Because Connie's quality language is really quality time. Her love language is quality time. And after 19 years together and studying Connie's love language, I know that. And so guys and ladies, I'd say study your spouse's love language. Know what they are. Because if I can get her time, then I can be able to do that. And I used to think time for years was just spending time together. You know, like she'd say, I just want time with you. And I thought, okay, great. So we'd be on the front of the TV or computers on our lap or whatever. And then finally I realized that that's not quality time. Is that right? It's not quality time. And that what she needed was just like 30 minutes a day. I give that amount of time to so many other things. She just wanted 30 minutes a day of sitting and talking and processing the day. Sometimes even while we're doing laundry together, just kind of processing the day and what's going on. And that was telling her that I love you in a way that she could understand.
Now, for Sean's love language, he would often come over during the day and he would want a hug or a kiss or to cop a feel. And I would be like, hey, I haven't showered, I smell bad, or I'm stressed, or I'm busy. But when I learned that his primary love language is physical touch, and that giving them that attention, which honestly, we're just talking about the love language of physical touch, that just takes a couple seconds during the day to just actually respond to his hug.
Filling me up right now, I'm telling you. It's like...
It made a difference in our daily relationship, which brings us to the third point that you can do for an awesome marriage.
Third practical thing, have frequent sex. Now, this is where my mom and my grandmother and aunts and uncle who attend here get very, very uncomfortable.
And your wife.
Yep. But we need to talk about sex if we're going to talk about awesome marriages. And let me just say this real quickly, because I think a lot of people get stressed out when we talk about sex at church. If the church isn't going to teach us how the sexual relationship should play into our lives, who's going to? I think we know that answer because they're doing that right now. And so we're going to talk about sex. Now, let's just start with some interesting science about sex and marriage.
So the brain, not another organ, is the real boss of the sexual experience.
So during sex, there's this neurochemicals that are released in the brain that contribute not only to awesome sex, but to awesome marriage. Now, before you start thinking, why is this being talked about in church? Again, just think back to our Mind Over Matter series. The cool thing about all the stuff that the brain does and how the body works is that God made it that way. So God designed your brain to help you have an awesome marriage. Here's how it works. The first chemical that is released is dopamine. Dopamine's job is to create pleasure rather, but it also drives you back to the source of that pleasure. In other words, dopamine makes the experience addictive. There is some addictive language when it comes to sex in the Bible. The book of Song of Solomon is two lovers having a conversation back and forth. One of them says, the man says, "You have stolen my heart, my sister," must be in Alabama, "my bride. You have stolen my heart with one glance of your eyes, with one jewel of your necklace." There's just this, you've taken a piece of me. Like, you have stolen some of me. I am addicted to you. Look what she says back. "Come, my beloved, let us go to the countryside. Let us spend the night in the villages." See, research shows that the source of our sexual pleasure will become someone we crave being around. Bottom line, you literally become addicted to your spouse when you have frequent sex.
So there's a second chemical, and this one's called oxytocin, and this chemical bonds you with the person you have sex with. It's relationship superglue. In the words of the great philosophers Sugarland, uh-oh, stuck on you. You and me, baby, we're stuck like glue.
It's actually true.
It's true. It's that almost spiritual, unexplainable feeling you have of love for someone. In Genesis, God describes it like this: "That is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh."
The phrase "become one flesh" in the original language is proskaleo, and it literally means to glue or to adhere together. So God chose to use this word for glue to describe the husband-wife marriage relationship and bond. And then I think this is just cool. This makes me want to worship God. He created a chemical in the brain that literally acts as relationship superglue. And here's another interesting fact about all this. Researchers have also shown that these chemicals are produced in the brain at a higher rate when you're having sex with someone that you are committed to and that you love.
That's why a recent study at Stanford University showed that those people who participate in the Friends with Benefits movement, in other words, it's just sex, there's no commitment needed, they actually return to the same partner over and over again. Maybe there's more commitment than they would like to admit. And then there's this one other fact that's helpful. Sexual pleasure is not greatest when you're young and uncommitted. There was a University of Illinois study done recently that found that middle-aged people in monogamous relationships have the best and the most frequent sex. In reality, a married couple in their 40s is having more frequent and better sex than the co-eds in their 20s.
Now, if you need some Bible to confirm this, the Bible is full of things to confirm this. Look at 1 Corinthians 7, 2-6. It's good for a man to have a wife. We can just stop right there and have a worship moment. It is good for a man to have a wife and for a woman to have a husband. Listen, sexual drives are strong, but marriage is strong enough to contain them and provide for a balanced and fulfilling sexual life in a world that is full of sexual disorder. The marriage bed must be a place of mutuality. The husband seeking to satisfy his wife, the wife seeking to satisfy her husband. Marriage is not a place for stand up for your rights. Marriage is a decision to serve the other, whether in bed or out. Abstaining from sex is permissible for a period of time if you both agree to it and if it's for the purposes of prayer and fasting, but only for such times. Then come back together again. Satan has an ingenious way of tempting us when we least expect it.
Whoa, now, the wife seeking to satisfy her husband. Marriage is not a place to stand up for your rights. Marriage is a decision to serve each other. Ladies, I know exactly what you're thinking because I've been there. You're too tired. He doesn't do this for me. He doesn't do that. But here's the thing. God designed your man. And when he did, he didn't make a mistake. He designed him to actually need sex in marriage. My eyes were really open to this when we did a study on a book called For Women Only. This book is where she pulls men of all walks of life. It's like older men, younger men, non-Christian men, Christian men. And at the end, she takes all this research and data and makes a book of things that men would really like for women to know. And of course, there's a chapter on sex. And this is the thing that men really want women to know, is that sex is not just a physical, selfish need. It's extremely emotional for them and even spiritual. Men cannot feel loved or express love without sex. And before you go rolling your eyes, remember, God made them that way. So just like the verse said, this area of marriage is not the place to stand up for you. It's the place to recognize your husband's unique design. He's different from you. And then you should have fun with it. Ladies, you literally have the ability by God to addict your husband to you, to glue him to you, to express and receive love in a unique way that God designed specifically for marriage, and to have fun together. See, when you start thinking about sex that way, all the excuses start to feel seemingly insignificant.
Now, so the point is have frequent sex. I know what everyone wants to know. What does frequent mean? Like, what's a number? Does it say in Corinthians how many times is frequent? Right, that's what you want to know. So here's a good barometer. Our counselor says what is appropriate for your age and your stage. And I think that's a great barometer because, for example, after you have a baby, there's just going to be a stage where things are going to slow down for a few weeks. But however, to make things super practical, let's just think back about what Paul is teaching in Corinthians, and let's just put some thought into it. Here's what he says. Abstaining from sex is permissible for a period of time if you both agree to it and if it's for the purposes of prayer and fasting, but only for such times, then come back together again. A couple things that we can learn from this passage. One, it's obvious that frequent marital sex is biblical. And second, the only real reason to take a break is when you're both so distressed over something that you're needing to hear from God. And so you both come together and you agree, we're going to be praying and we're going to be fasting instead of getting jiggy with it. And so that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to come back together again.
Okay, so I'm just going to go out on a limb. I'm just thinking it's not very often that you and your spouse have come together and said, we should pray and fast. I know that there's only been a few times in our marriage that we've said we would pray and fast over a few things. So let's talk about the average week when there's no praying and fasting. Ladies, let's say you've had a good week. You're happy and you're relaxed. Think in your head about how often during that week would you maybe want to have sex? Like once a week, right?
And guys, we all know that for most of us, we would like to have sex, well, more than once a week, right? I mean, let's just say that. So you want a number, right? That's what you want.
Ladies, take your once a week and add 2 to 3 to that.
Guys, take whatever your number is and minus 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or something. from that. And somewhere in the middle of that, you're going to find your marriage, awesome marriage sex number, bringing us to number 4. Everybody take a big sigh of relief. We're done talking about sex. All right, number 4, be friends. Now, Connie and I use this phrase in our home to each other a lot. More fun, less work.
Now, that does not mean that we don't get the work done. Being mommy and daddy to 3 of our kids and being foster parents and doing all of the church stuff that needs to happen, pastoring the church and meeting with people, that's a lot of work. But we know that we're going to be naturally driven to work on our kids, work on our careers, work on our homes. So we want to remind ourselves to have lots of fun while we're doing that. It's kind of like the spoonful of sugar mentality.
And here's the thing that we've learned. How can you have fun together and be friends with one another if you're never together?
How can you be friends and have fun together if all you ever do is watch people on TV have fun together?
How can you be friends and have fun together if all you do is argue about who you want your spouse to be?
How can you be friends who have fun together if you have stopped flirting?
How you doing? Doing good? One of the keys to an awesome marriage is just to have fun together. Pastor Michael Morris at Seacoast Church made a statement to me one time that really changed my life. It was a statement in passing, but it didn't just pass through me. He said, Sean, you can tell a lot about the health of your marriage by the look on your wife's face when no one is looking. And I have to say, there have been seasons in our marriage where I have looked over and using that as a barometer have thought, we're not having enough fun. She's not good. And then there have been seasons where I'll look over and I'll see that there's this glow and this smile about her. And I'm like, I'm doing good. It's going good. and she'll say, what are you looking at me for? And what I'll tell her is, I'm just studying our marriage by the story that it says on your face. I'm asking the question, are we having fun?
See, when we're not having fun, we can fall into 2 unhealthy postures when it comes to marriage. The first one, we can get really focused on the kids and become kid-centered, or get focused on the job and the business and become job-centered, or on the house and the stuff, or we just get tired. And so we start to get really good at the shoulder-to-shoulder relationship. This is when we're a team. We're in it together. We're beside each other, but our marriage starts looking like something we could just do with anybody. Kind of like roommates, and you all know that nobody wants to be roommates for more than a couple years. Or things can get worse, and the friendship just dissipates altogether, and we start to argue so much that we're either not talking or we're really just mean to one another. And that's when we're in the back-to-back relationship, where we're fighting and arguing over every little thing. But see, an awesome marriage relationship is one that is defined by a face-to-face friendship.
And you know what? You can't be in a face-to-face relationship if you're not friendly and having fun with one another.
I used to get mad at Sean all day long about every little thing. See, I wasn't really friendly to Sean.
Really? I mean, would you like to share maybe some of the
I'd really like it if you changed the toilet paper roll. But if you haven't done it in 19 years, probably need to just get over it, you know?
Seems like you're still bitter to me. I don't know if that's true or not.
Proverbs 17:9 says this: love prospers when a fault is forgiven, but dwelling on it separates close friends. Awesome marriages are those who are really close friends to one another, forgiving and believing the best about one another.
Now, if you don't feel that way about your spouse and that they're a good friend, here's what not to do. Don't use this as an opportunity to point out their failures. But instead, here's a dangerous question to ask yourself and to ask God to kind of prod within you. Say, how can I be a better friend? How can I be more friendly so that we have more fun? See, if they don't respond kind of in kind when you start to do that.
And finally, step 5, repeat. A successful marriage requires falling in love many, many times, always with the same person.
Now, Connie and I, we honestly, we have a very good relationship, and I would say an awesome marriage now. I feel like almost every week we grow in leaps and bounds, and we're having fun together, but it took work to get here. Every single day we've had to choose to follow Jesus. So I want to encourage you, follow Jesus. He's the light that will light the dark path that your marriage seems like right now. We've had to choose every single day to choose each other. And there have still been seasons where that's been more difficult than others. Choose each other. We've had to find intimate moments in every single day to keep us from becoming just roommates. We've had to have fun as friends together. And then we had to repeat. And we do it over and over again.
As we close today, I'd like to be really honest. There have been parts in our marriage that were so painful and raw that sitting through a message like this would have actually just made things worse. We would have been ugly to each other, and the pain would have made it to where we would have walked out and actually done nothing at all. Today, we'd like everyone who's here, who is married, to do 3 things.
First, I think it's time to call a truce. Meaning it's time to communicate, but do it peaceably and lovingly. Take time today to sit and talk calmly about what really struck home with each of you. What is God saying to you about your marriage, and what are you going to do about it? Second, evaluate if you need some help. The thing that saddens me the most as I look back 16 years ago when Connie and I almost didn't make it was we had to do it alone. There were people who knew that we were struggling. There were people who knew even more details than we've given, and no one asked any questions. No one asked to help because everyone was pretending and everyone was performing. There was no one we could tell the truth through. There was no one who could help walk us through the difficult times. And I can't imagine how much easier this road would have been had we had someone to help and had we sought and found help. On CCB this week, I'll be putting up a post of our recommended marriage counselors and how to get counseling through Freedom Church as well. And we want to help you. We want to be there for you. You can have an awesome marriage. Also, we have couples all around the auditorium. They're going to be in the back corner, moving that way during our response time so that they can pray with you. Take the first step to admit to someone we're not in a good place, and just let these couples pray with you this weekend.
Third, respond to God today. No matter how good or awful things were when you walked in today, it's time to take this step to choose each other. There's some stations set up. There's a table and a basket, and inside are 2 Lego blocks. One of them says, follow Jesus, and the other one says, choose each other. Go to that basket together. Each of you take a Lego, and then pray together, and then snap them together and take them home as a reminder of the commitment you've made to one another.
Can we pray for you? God, I thank you for the couples who are here, who were brave enough to come when maybe they had even heard that today was going to be about marriage, and they're in pain, and it's very difficult. God, I pray that you would allow them to experience your love and your grace, but God, most of all, give them the courage to do something different than they've ever done before, which is to trust someone else with their pain, to pray with someone, and most of all, God, to trust you that you're the healer. God, I pray for the couples that are here that are good. They really are. It's a good thing, but they want to be awesome. And so, God, I just pray that they would be willing to take the step to say, how can we get awesome? They would pray together. They would open up their hearts and their minds, and they would experience it. God, I pray for single adults here that are maybe single for a season. And God, marriage is on their horizon, and they want to prepare their hearts even today for what that will look like. Begin to make them the person you want them to be the spouse you want them to be. And God, I pray for those that are here that are single for a reason. Something came into their marriage and broke it up. And so hearing sermons like this is difficult. But God, I pray for the hope that could be a new relationship. I pray for the hope that can be the healing. And that God, as we respond, you would work in their lives. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.